Have you ever noticed that safety can slowly turn into a trap of its own? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about how you can change your life up and do better with small steps all the time. This was a topic I covered before, and it was surrounded around a book, which strangely enough, I decided I was going to read and do podcasts on, and then it ended up changing my life unexpectedly, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. But comfort's one of those things that I found ended up trapping me, and I didn't even notice it. So I had a very wild childhood. I had no comfort, no security. Every day was, what am I going to encounter today? When you have parents that have problems and one's an alcoholic and they're both hoarders and you just don't even know what you're going to get. And then all of a sudden I started running my own life, and then I started slowly but surely trying to cool everything down, right? Now my life is very quiet, expected. There's no big shocks going on in my life. And I never realized it, but comfort had been slowly sort of building a trap around me. Routines can help you get things done, but sometimes maybe you feel like you're half sleeping through life. The steady paycheck arrives like clockwork. You get groceries on the very same day. You go to the gym at these exact moments. And those are great patterns. Like I said, I have nothing against patterns in your life. But then all of a sudden, one day you realize now the pattern is my comfort. The pattern is protection. And then it dramatically starts to shift into the pattern has become like cement. That when this cement is breached or something challenges it, then the whole point of living, gets off limits. I'm not trying new things. Everything's off limits. I'm not doing this. And I'm avoiding anything that's not certain in my life. And then suddenly you don't realize how far you slipped into comfort being, I don't want to say it's a prison, but let's say cement feet. And you didn't even realize it was happening. And maybe you want to make a decision that changes your life. Maybe you think that someone would add great things to your life if you brought them into your life. I grew up in the military, and I got moved around a ton of time. My parents moved from place to place, and I wasn't rattled by change. Change was just a part of military life. Then I bought my first house, which is this house right here. And I was like, I'm never moving again. I don't want to ever move again. I've moved too many times in my life. I don't want to do that. Then you start getting financially stable. You start, now I'm getting my health in place. My work was fine. I worked at a company that liked me. My customers liked me. And I was rock solid there. I was in a very comfortable place. And then you start panicking at the idea of anything that challenges what you were doing it. And you could wake up in the middle of the night, I don't know, realizing that everything's pretty comfortable right now. Everything's in its place. And then one thing happens, and something did happen, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And it's just like someone yanked my security blanket away. I didn't know what to do. And like I said, I read this book more because I wanted to do it for y'all as part of this podcast, and instead I did it for me. And that's why I'm sort of revisiting it. That was about 2.5 years ago when I read this book. And like I said, it came at this crazy time that it actually changed what I did with my life. And so you can, I have a friend of mine, she's very exact about everything she does in her life. She likes everything neatly arranged. She doesn't like risk at all. She trusts the people she trusts. And everything outside of kind of that circle of trust that she has, she kind of gives everything the eyeball. And I always laugh because I was the adventurous one. I was the one who did the exciting things. And then what I didn't realize is that certainty had snuck up on me and very quietly and politely wrapped me in bubble wrap. I now was very safe and very comfortable. And what surprised me the most about that is that, like I said, I used to live with uncertainty and that was a furnace of my life. Unpredictable. I would make plans. I would make contingency plans. I'd make escape plans. If things go sideways here, I'm going to go live in the woods. At one point, I decided I was just going to go live in the woods and fend for myself. This kind of resiliency I had in me as a kid, I could handle chaos better than most adults could have handled chaos when I was a kid. And as an adult, like I said, I started running as far away as possible from chaos. And then once I got out of chaos and then got out of unpredictability, and then I wanted a safe space, and then I had money in case an emergency happened. I had a home, which I didn't have to leave. I had a solid job. And suddenly, like I said, this was it's not a trap, but like I said, a sort of a bubble wrap, wrap like that. And it was a good stretch, and my life was settled. And I, finally thought, okay, good. Things are really good right now. And comfort is clever. It has a side effect you don't see coming. The more secure your life becomes, the more fragile that security starts to feel. If anything threatens it at all, then suddenly you're just guarding it like a antique vase behind museum glass. Don't shake anything. Don't change anything. Don't take anything away. And you realize how it becomes so important in your life that almost everything else is not important, and as this one particular thing. And so when I look back at that, I didn't want to change anything. I liked this house. I liked where I lived. Even when it came to dating, I have my friends. I have what I do. Do I want to bring someone into my life and maybe it's going to upset the apple cart here? Do I want to make any kind of a change by finding a man? And I still think about that today. And it just gets stubborn, this decision making of where you start saying, no, thanks. But here's the part that made me laugh. And this is what happened in my particular case. So I decided I was going to read this book for this podcast. And I thought it was just kind of a good book to explore. And what happened is I was at one of my customer sites and they said, well, we're really looking to hire someone who could be an expert at the software that you're implementing, Jill. I was there, helping them get it set up. And I went, oh no, they're looking for an expert at the software. You know what my number one job is? Being an expert at the software. And suddenly, Jill's in full-blown panic mode. I went into full-blown panic mode. And now I'm reading this book that we'll talk about here in just a minute. And it's called The Gift of Maybe by Allison Carmen. And the idea is that comfort becomes a trap almost in and of itself. She was comfortable in her life, and then she had a change in her life she did not want. Her husband ended up leaving her, and that was not the change that she was looking for. She wasn't looking to make a change, but he was. And in this particular case, suddenly she was talking about how this changed, even though she fought it tooth and nail, and she didn't want this. It ended up changing her life, but it ended up changing her life for the better and making big changes in her life. And every single time I had that opportunity to I got offered jobs all the time. Customers would offer me jobs all the time. I got offered jobs in airports by consulting companies who were competing with my company. Jill, come work for us. And I'd be like, nope, I'm not going to do that. And all of a sudden, this opportunity came, a group of people I liked, in a job I was good at, in a place that I really appreciated those people. And this job would be full-time remote. So I could stay where I live in my house and take this job. And I ended up panicking. I mean, I probably didn't sleep, I don't know, for a month, thinking about what should I do. It nudged everything loose. And like I said, I was on the plane coming home from this customer. I was exhausted. I was listening to her in a podcast, and I knew I was going to read her book next. So I wanted to hear her talk a little bit about her book. And then she started this whole short episode about being addicted to certainty. And the host described this addiction. And I thought, oh no, this is me. I am addicted to certainty now, and I have this fantastic opportunity sitting here in front of me to do something different, to work for a different kind of company, to do the thing, though, that I'm good at doing. And it wasn't even that big of a leap, right? I'm going to be working on the software I already work on. I'm going to be doing the things I'm already good at. I'm just going to be doing it for somebody else and with a different team of people. But boy, that small changes through me. I mean, I think it's part of our survival brain, right? That scans the world looking for danger out there. And if something is unfamiliar, we sort of treat it like a threat. And that's what hit me hard, that it was me, that every piece of this book was true, that I had engineered a perfectly safe box that I could put my name in on it. And there I was. And so when the plane landed, something inside me just kind of cracked open, not like dramatically, but with these small fractures of truth that maybe I needed to do something different with my life. Maybe I've been chasing the wrong things. Maybe what I had been treasuring isn't what I had thought it was. And so then the word in my head started echoing because of her interview and her book. Maybe started echoing in my brain more. That brings, like I said, to the book by Allison Carmen, The Gift of Maybe. And if you haven't read it, the whole book is built around this whole thing about the tiny world that holds such an enormous emotional power in our lives, about how certainty is an illusion. She thought she had certainty and her husband left her. I had certainty, and it's possible I worked in the tech industry. Maybe they're going to have layoffs. They never did, by the way. But suddenly, this maybe opened up a window for me. It softened its grip of certainty for me. It started suggesting to me that some things go right and some things go wrong, and maybe could grow into something unexpected and something beautiful. Maybe isn't indecision, it's a possibility. And so this whole episode that I did before, because I ended up doing this podcast, and I did it right while I was deciding whether I was going to take this job, because the interview process for the job I'm in right now was like 4 months long. So I had a lot of time to think about it and a lot of time to panic about it. And this whole series of books, podcasts, if you listened to them back then, I was going through a meltdown right then, thinking, what should I do? And it was like me walking out of my own cage, step by step, through these podcasts that I did about this book. And so here's some truths that are easy for us to forget when we start thinking about those things that keep us safe. Sometimes they're just keeping us small. It's keeping our lives small. Sometimes certainty isn't a prize. We aim for it and we might get it, but maybe that's not what we should be looking at. So we're going to talk in the next podcast about the second half of the equation. If this word can change the way you think and the way you hope and the future then you're looking at, this word maybe, what else is it going to do for us? So like I said, I wanted to revisit it. It's been 2.5 years since I did these podcasts, and hopefully this is giving you a little food for thought. And like I said, if you're in a position where maybe it's a little hard for you right now, check out her book for sure. She doesn't have a life like mine. I don't think she necessarily even thinks like I think. But this book was so radical in what it talked to me about. Unexpectedly, this would be a book that I would hand to my best friend and say, hey, you're addicted to certainty too much. I think this will help you out. And instead, I didn't see it in my own life. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week. I hope you are having great time in your life and things are going well. Comment here in the channel if you're watching this on a video service. And if you're listening to a podcast, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Thanks so much and have a great day.